Hi, I'm Sam Pritchard from People in Paddocks, and this is Box 5 of the 10 Box Audit Framework. Today we're talking about incident and hazard reporting. I remember one particular quarter when I was reporting to the board on risk management. I had 21 incidents on one farm alone for the quarter and no near misses. And I recall the board saying, Sam, you've got 21 incidents and no near misses. And I'm like, do you know what it's like to get the team to report on near misses? It's like pulling teeth. And it really was. So we needed to put systems in place because the board were right. By reporting on all these incidents didn't mean we were a safe farm, it meant that we were a blind one by not reporting on our near misses. But it's really difficult for the team sometimes because who wants to come to you and say, hey, guess what, I just did something dumb. But it really is vital that we learn more about our near misses because they are potentially an injury waiting to happen. So let's start with incident reporting. We're going to break incidents down into 3 sections. Firstly, near misses, and then types of incidents, and then notifiable incidents. So with near misses, this is where it's important that we know before an incident happens what potentially could go wrong. So it could be that somebody slipped on the steps because they were caked in mud, or that they weren't using their 3 points of contact and climbing down the stairs backwards and skipped the last few and nearly rolled their ankle, or that a grain bag falls from the top of a cedar and just misses somebody that's standing below. No one gets hurt from any of these, but we can learn a lot from them. And the way to keep that happening and reporting open is for us to lead as by example and lead as leaders. And that's exactly what the board wanted to see, just a record of how we had tried to be proactive about incidents happening in the future, and that there was some correlation between the number of near misses we were getting and then the number of incidents. Preferably your near misses are higher than your incidents. So that's going to take a lot of culture building in terms of turning your team around to get them to start talking about near misses. But importantly, if you start talking about them too, and if something happens to you, then report it, talk about it, bring it up at a toolbox meeting, and it just normalizes the whole process. So then we talk about different types of incidents. So different types of incidents could firstly be first aid only, where the person is just looked after on site. They might just need a band-aid or whatnot, but you still need to record it in terms of what happened, just in case it ends up getting worse. A situation that we had at one of the farms was that one of the workers had got some of the vaccination whilst he was looking after animals into his thumb, and at first it was fine and he was treated on the spot, but it ended up blowing up. So it was good we had a record of what time that happened and how it happened and who was there, etc. So make sure that you document all of that. The next type will be with medical care. So if you actually need to take somebody or get somebody in to look after them or to take care of them, if they need to go to hospital or whatnot, then that's the type of incident that is. Next one is a machinery incident. So you may have an injured machine, so that would be a different kind of report where it may be another party involved, it may be a manufacturer fault, it may be a worker's fault, or whatever it might be. You just need to document that as a machinery incident. And then the other one is a lost time injury, and that's if the person is now going to need to take time off work, even if it's a day. You still need to record that as a lost time. There might be a situation where you have all 4 types of incidents. They've had some first aid at site, they've then gone and sought medical attention, they've then had some, it's also involved machinery, and it was also lost time. So you're going to record that one as lost time injury because that's the highest level of all the incidents. Next, we're going to, with our incidents, talk about the communication side of it and the process of what we do. And number 1 is the communication piece, and it comes back in all of these audit boxes that we talk about. Communication is key. You will get tired of me saying that, but we need to firstly look after the person. So we need to look after, regardless of whose fault it is or whatnot. Number 1 priority is to make sure that physically and mentally our worker and anybody else who witnessed it is okay, and look after them. Then we need to get to the bottom of it and investigate the incident. What happened, why it happened, how it happened, and how we can fix it. All those questions are going to be really important in this process, and talking to more than just one person, because it's interesting how different people see different things, particularly when an incident happens. So hopefully you might have a witness that you can ask for some feedback as well in terms of what happened. But get down to the nitty-gritty of it. We're not laying any blame at this stage. We're just trying to understand what happened and how, most importantly, we can avoid it from happening again. Then we need to take lots of photos. I have a really weak stomach, and the number of photos I've received over the years from the most horrific accidents, it makes me feel sick just thinking about it. But it's really important in the documentation stage that we get those photos and put them down into our records. If somebody injured a finger, we need to know which hand it was on and which finger it was, because you will be asked, particularly if there's a WorkSafe investigation into it, or down the track, if they re-injure a finger, we need to know that it was the same finger or a different finger or whatever it might be. So make sure you record all of that. I do have a template for recording machinery incidents as well as personal incidents, and I can provide those anytime. So the other type of incident we're going to talk about is a mental health incident as well, and we have touched on that briefly in some of the other boxes, and we need to ensure that we record everything about the mental health injury and take that really seriously. And that's where I talked about in the last video, preferably doing your mental health first aid course. It's really practical information and tips to get you through a situation and to help that person get the help that they need. Very similar to a first aid course where we look after the person initially, support them, and then get them the help that they require. Same thing with the mental health. We need to look after that person and help them get the help that they require as soon as possible. So recording is the same. We need to investigate that situation, but it's a little bit more delicate, so that's why I highly recommend. And I'll put a link in terms of how you can find a mental health first aid course, or the one that I did, because it was brilliant. And then there are incidents that are notifiable to the authorities, and there are two important things here. One is that they need to be reported on time, and secondly, that you may need to, and most likely will have to, preserve the site. So keep in mind, if you do have an incident, that you don't move anything, you don't clean anything, you don't touch anything to do with that incident, that you preserve that and report as soon as possible. So incidents that are notifiable has recently changed again. They're always adding different notifiable incidents on. So I'm going to put a list up on the screen so that you can see all of the things or incidents that need to be notified to the authorities, and depending on your jurisdiction and where you're living, you have different contact numbers for WorkSafe or SafeWork, whoever you report to, so you need to give them a call. And it's a very easy phone call. They are so helpful. There is one misunderstanding that many farmers have, and that is that the authorities are going to try to pull them up on other things when they come onto the farm, etc. They're just there to help, and I have found them to be extremely helpful. We had a recent situation where sadly one of the workers on a very safe farm of about 20 staff lost his finger with a cutting machine, and when the authorities did come out, they agreed that he did everything the right way. We had undertaken every safety precaution we could, done as much training as we could, everything was in place, but it was just a really unfortunate accident. But what WorkSafe did was they helped us to come up with a tool. We even checked with the manufacturer, and they didn't have a tool to prevent this from happening. So WorkSafe helped us come up with a tool, and the team developed that tool, and now we've got that in place and put that into the safe work procedures. We're on a toolbox meeting using that particular tool, so that now going forward we can try to avoid that happening again. After every notifiable incident, I run through the same process. So once we've looked after the person, we've contacted authorities, they're on their way, we've done all the reporting, etc., we need to let the team know. Don't let them find out through word of mouth or through the local butcher or whoever it might be. We need to inform the team ourselves. So communicate to them as soon as possible. And that might be a WhatsApp post or similar, because that might be the best way to contact everybody at the same time. But just explain what's happened, also so that they can reach out to that person, because that's really going to help that person in terms of getting back to work sooner and getting the support that they need. We're also going to organise a toolbox meeting, and as soon as possible, don't wait for your next toolbox meeting, because this particular toolbox meeting is going to be just about that particular incident. And we're going to talk about ways that we could have avoided that or could avoid that in the future. And this again ties back to our collaboration with our team, so it all comes together. Now let's have a little talk about hazard reporting. This is a really important process in terms of keeping our farms safe. I really believe that if we can get more hazards reported and managed, we're going to bring that fatality rate down in our industry. So let's take this one really seriously. When I conduct an induction, I go through all the policies, and one of them is on hazards and risks and reporting, etc. So my aim is to ensure that when a worker is out in the field, they can quickly identify the type of hazard that it is. So I pull up this matrix to show red as opposed to a green hazard, so what is likely to happen and what that outcome could be if that hazard was to hurt somebody. And so we want to get into their heads, okay, when they're looking at a hazard, is this a red or is this a green or is it somewhere in between? Because if we can simplify that for everybody whilst they're looking, it's going to make it much easier for people to manage that risk whilst they're out in the paddock, and particularly whilst they're on their own. So I would suggest that a green hazard might be a bit of curled up wire in the paddock. They're about to use a particular machine in that paddock. They see the curled up wire, they stop, they pick it up, remove it, and then they can continue on. And to me, that's green. You know, it's unlikely that there's going to be too much damage. There will be a bit of damage to the machine, but too much damage in terms of injury. All they need to do is pick it up and they've totally eliminated that hazard. Whereas a red hazard would be more likely a low-lying power line in the paddock, and again, they're about to perform a machinery or use machinery in that paddock. If they see a low-lying power line, that's red, particularly if they're going under it or anywhere near it, because if they do make contact with it, it could cause serious injury, even death. So they need to stop what they're doing, contact the authorities. And as I tell them, the authorities are brilliant, particularly in Victoria, I know, and New South Wales too. I've noticed if we call the power line company, they're there within a couple of hours to check on it. They don't let that pass, so get onto it straight away, and the team needs to know that if they identify a red hazard, that they need to stop, contact you, contact authorities, and get that hazard fixed as soon as possible. So in box 2, we talked more about the risk management and identifying hazards and risks and how to control them, etc. So we won't go into that again. I highly recommend that if you do need a refresher, go back to box 2 and look more into that. But what we will refresh here on is the importance of identifying hazards regularly with the team. And I've said it before, at the toolbox meeting, it's the best time. It's just to go around the team and ask them if there are any new hazards that they've seen, and to talk about them as a team and what could be done about them. This is where I mentioned Pippa again. I know, as I say to you, it sounds like I'm here to promote Pippa, but I really have solved all these problems with this simple app for safety. And now we've also added in mapping of hazards. So when a worker is out in the field and they report on a hazard, they can also pin it on a map so that other workers can see that on the map. And with our integration with AgWorld, you can now see that hazard in AgWorld too, when you're using the app for AgWorld. So get onto Pippa, make it easy for your team to report on hazards daily and near misses. So in Pippa under safety, they'll be able to report really easily by taking a photo of an injury, and that will constitute the first part of their incident reporting, and same with hazards as well. And if they do report a hazard, it also becomes a task, so that you can create a task out of that in terms of eliminating it. So get onto it, get onto Pippa and make it easy for your team to start reporting on hazards and near misses and incidents. Now remember, none of this works if the team don't feel comfortable actually speaking up. So it's really important that we're encouraging people to have a voice in the workplace. And that's why I advocate that toolbox meetings on a regular basis are really important, and that there's always time and there's always a section for everybody to talk about safety and to share stories. Maybe sometimes they'll have a little laugh at each other, but that's okay too. It's really important that we normalise talking about near misses and hazards at every time. If you want to talk more about your safety, by all means jump onto our Safety Serve suite. We catch up every Wednesday from 12:30 to 1:30 Eastern Standard Time. The link is in our bio or in the comments, and you can also jump onto our website, which the link is here, so that you can see and take an audit yourself on your farm and just to see where you're at and get some immediate tips and advice as to what you can do to get better. As always, have fun and stay safe.